January 25th, 1327. A 14-year-old boy named Edward stands in London. The crown is being lowered onto his head. The bells of Westminster are ringing, and the crowd is screaming, "Long live the king!" Sounds like a dream, right? Wrong. For Edward III, this was a nightmare, because standing right next to him were the two people who had just hunted down his father, murdered his friends, and were currently using him as a teenage meat shield. I'm James Bay, and today on History Habits, we're diving into the Shadow Coronation. We're going to see how a kid who started as a puppet became one of the greatest kings in history, and how you can use his shadow strategy to reclaim your own life when you feel like you've lost the keys to your own castle. To understand why January 25th was so weird, we have to look at Edward's dad, Edward II. Now, look, history can be mean, but Edward II was objectively a disaster. Imagine a king who didn't want to be king. He preferred rowing boats with his favorite people, like Piers Gaveston and the Despensers, rather than, running the country. Point of debate. Some historians argue Edward II wasn't bad, just misunderstood and unwarrior-like in a warrior age. Personally, if you lose the Battle of Bannockburn to the Scots and lose your wife to the worst enemy, you're having a very bad week. Speaking of his wife, Queen Isabella, the she-wolf of France. She was brilliant, she was fed up, and she was currently in an open affair with Roger Mortimer, a man who basically lived to spite the king. In 1326, they invaded England. Think about that. The queen and her boyfriend invaded the king's country. That's a Maury episode in the making. By January 1327, they had Edward II in a dungeon. But here's the problem. In the 14th century, people believed kings were chosen by God. You can't just fire a king. So on January 20th, they forced him to abdicate. Give us the crown, or we'll make sure your son never gets it. Broken and alone, he gave it up. 5 days later, January 25th, young Edward III is proclaimed king. But let's be real, he was a figurehead. Isabella and Mortimer were the ones holding the checkbook and the army. This brings us to the shadow reign. For 3 years, Edward III lived in a golden cage. Mortimer and Isabella spent the crown's money like they won the lottery. They controlled who Edward talked to, they controlled where he slept. It's like being a teenager today, except instead of your parents taking your phone, they're taking your entire kingdom and executing your uncles. Edward had to sit through meetings and watch Mortimer, the man sleeping with his mother, behave like the king. Can you imagine the awkwardness at dinner? Pass the salt, Roger. By the way, thanks for the coup. Edward wasn't just sulking, he was observing. He saw that Mortimer was getting arrogant. He saw the other nobles getting annoyed. He was waiting for his Nottingham moment. October 13th, 1330. Edward is 18 now. He's at Nottingham Castle. Mortimer is there, paranoid, literally sleeping with the castle keys under his pillow. But Edward found the glitch in the matrix.
This tunnel is our chance. I swear I will find a way to be rid of my mother and her lover, Mortimer, once and for all.
A secret underground tunnel led from outside the castle walls. At midnight, Edward and his loyal few crept through the mud, burst into the queen's room, and snatched Mortimer. Isabella famously screamed, "Fair son, have pity on the gentle Mortimer." Edward's response? Nope. He saved the monarchy. He brought stability. He arrested his own mother and executed her lover without a real trial. He was just as power hungry. Yeah, but he went on to start the 100-Year War and founded the Order of the Garter. He turns England into a superpower. Whatever you think of his methods, the boy who was a puppet on January 25th became the man who ruled for 50 years. He transitioned from king in name to king in fact. So why am I telling you this? Because most of us are living our own January 25th. Maybe you have a job title, but your boss, your Mortimer, makes every decision for you. Maybe you have a dream, but your regents, fear, social pressure, or toxic habits are the ones actually running the show. You are the king or queen of your life in name only. But Edward III shows us that lack of agency is not permanent identity. He used his trapped years to study how not to lead. He waited. He built a small, loyal circle. And when the time was right, he went through the tunnel. So here's your 3-step plan inspired by Edward III. Identify your regents. Who is holding your keys? Is it a person? Is it a habit like procrastination? Name them. Build your loyal few. Edward didn't take the castle alone. He had Montague and a few knights. Who are the 2 or 3 people in your life who actually want you to succeed, not control you? Find your secret tunnel. Stop trying to break down the front gate. What is the side hustle, the new skill, or the quiet boundary you can build in the shadows that will eventually give you leverage to take over? Edward III didn't ask for permission to be king. He just started acting like one. Today is your January 25th. Start the transition. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the shadow coronation, do me a favor. Hit that like button. It helps the algorithm realize that history isn't just about dead guys in wigs. Comment below, who is the Mortimer in your life right now? And share with someone who needs to reclaim their own personal sovereignty. I'm James Bay. Keep building those history habits. I'll see you in the next one.